Marissa Johnson had walked that hallway 100 times before. The Carrington estate was massive, filled with marble floors, wide staircases, and silent corners that held too many secrets. But on this particular afternoon, as she carried a basket of fresh linens to the guest wing, something made her stop. The light in the hallway was dim. One of the bulbs had blown again, and nobody had replaced it. It was always like that in the East Corridor. The rich liked everything pristine where guests, as could see, but the quiet corners where workers passed were often neglected. That's when she heard it. A man's voice, low, firm, and unmistakably serious, coming from the slightly ajar door to Mr. Carrington's home office. She wouldn't have paid attention, except he wasn't alone. There were other voices too. 3, maybe 4 men, all white, all speaking in hushed but tense tones. Something about the way they spoke made her stop walking. She held her breath. The audit's coming soon. "Are than we thought," said a deep voice. Marissa recognized it as Mr. Carrington's. She had worked in his mansion for over 3 years, cleaned his rugs, scrubbed his toilets, poured his damn coffee, and she'd learned his voice better than she wanted. "Then we push it back," another man said, sharper, angrier. "I told you, if anyone gets wind of how we move those accounts, they won't." Mr. Carrington cut in. "As long as no one talks. And the girl from payroll? We already handled her." He was silence. Marissa blinked, pondered. "You paid her off?" someone asked. A laugh. "Not quite. She's in Costa Rica now. All expenses covered. Permanently." The men chuckled, but something about that laugh chilled Marissa to her core. "Look," Carrington said, his tone shifting to cold steel, "we've all got our hands dirty on this. If one of us goes down, we all do. You understand?" "Yes," a few voices murmured. Marissa took a step back, linen basket pressed to her chest, hard hammering. She didn't know exactly what they were talking about, but it was bad. Really bad. Embezzlement, fraud, bribery. Worse. She turned to go, silently, carefully, but her foot brushed the corner of a decorative vase on the hallway table. It wobbled, drift. The shatter echoed like a gunshot. "Who's out there?" a voice barked from inside the office. Marissa didn't wait. She ran down the hallway, around the curve, past the grand staircase. She ducked into the laundry room and dropped the basket onto the floor, chest heaving, sweat beading on her forehead. She stood there in the dark, trying to breathe. A few minutes later, she heard footsteps. Heavy ones. A man, security guard, or someone else, came down the corridor, peeking into rooms. She grabbed a mop and began pretending to clean the floor. When he opened the laundry room door, she gave him a tight smile. "You see anyone come through here?" he asked, narrowing his eyes. "No, sir," she replied, keeping her voice scent. "Yeah, just doing my job." He looked at her for a long second, then nodded and left. Marissa waited until she heard his boots echo up the stairs before she sank to her knees, arms shaking. That night, she barely slept. The mansion was quiet after 10 p.m., but Marissa's mind wouldn't stop racing. Her small room, tucked away near the servants' entrance, felt like a cell. She stared at the ceiling, thinking about what she'd heard. What did they mean about moving accounts? Who was the girl fro? Payroll? And what the hell did permanently really mean? She had worked for Carrington long enough to know how powerful he was. He wasn't just a businessman. He was a man with deep connections, political donors, city officials, even judges. Everyone smiled at him during fundraisers and handed him plaques at charity events. But Marissa had seen another side. The way he talked to staff, the way he looked at her when she made eye contact too long. She had stayed quiet all these years because she needed the job, needed the paycheck to send home to her mother in Atlanta, to keep her younger sister in nursing school. But now she had something dangerous in her head. The next morning, everything was normal. Carrington sat in the breakfast room, reading the Wall Street Journal and sipping his espresso. His wife, Elise, was at her Pilates class, and their spoiled schnauzer barked at the gardener through the window. Marissa entered with her usual calm, placing his omelet and toast in front of him. He didn't look up. "You break something yesterday?" he asked casually, flipping a page of the paper. Marissa froze. "Excuse me, sir? I heard a vase broke. East Corridor." Her voice caught in her throat. "Yes, sir. I bumped it by accident. I'm sorry." He glanced up at her, eyes narrow. "Accidents happen," he said flatly. Then, after a beat, "Careful next time." She nodded and backed away, pulse racing. Later that afternoon, as she cleaned the upstairs guest bathroom, her phone buzzed. It was her friend Jada, another housekeeper who worked a few streets over. "Girl, you won't believe what I heard. That Carrington guy, some rumor going around that his company is under federal review. My boss mentioned it this morning. You okay working there?" Marissa stared at the screen, her hands trembling. She looked up, catching her reflection in the mirror. She didn't recognize the woman staring back. Something was happening, and she was right in the middle of it. "Very, SSA kept her head down for the next 2 days. She cleaned the marble counters a little too hard. She folded towels with a little too much focus. She smiled when spoken to, nodded when asked questions, and never, not once, lingered in the hallways. But the words still echoed in her mind. She's in Costa Rica now. All expenses covered. Permanently. What if that girl hadn't left willingly? What if handled meant something worse? Marissa didn't consider herself naive. She'd worked for wealth, high white families long enough to know that what they showed to the world and what they did behind closed doors were two very different things. But this felt darker than anything she'd ever seen. And now she was scared. She didn't know who she could talk to. Not the other staff. They were either too afraid or too loyal. And certainly not the police. Mr. Carrington was the police in this town. He donated to their fundraisers, had barbecues with the chief, took pictures with the mayor. Marissa knew what happened to women like her, black women who spoke up without proof. They called them hysterical, unreliable, fired them, buried them, and if things got serious enough, they made them disappear. Just like that girl from payroll. On Friday morning, Marissa was dusting the grand piano when someone knocked on the front door. She wasn't usually allowed to answer it. Carrington liked his domestic staff to stay invisible when guests arrived, but the security guard was nowhere to be seen, and the butler had the day off. She wiped her hands on her apron and opened the heavy door. A man in his early 30s stood there in a gray suit, holding a leather briefcase. His smile was too wide to be casual. "Good morning," he said brightly. "I'm Agent Donovan, FBI." Marissa's breath hitched. "I'm here to speak with Mr. Carrington." Her heart thudded in her chest. "One moment, sir," she managed to say. "I'll let him know." She closed the door slowly and turned around. The legs felt weak. FBI. Carrington met the agent in the study. Marissa lingered near the staircase, pretending to straighten a vase of flowers while her ears strained for the conversation. But the door was shut tight this time. He was being more careful now. After 20 minutes, the agent left. He didn't say anything to her on the way out, just nodded and walked to his black government sedan. But Carrington, he was furious. An hour later, his voice boomed through the house as he barked in. "Oh, the phone. Who the hell told them anything?" He growled. "I thought this was locked down. And don't give me that just routine crap, Mitchell. They don't send someone like Donovan for routine." Marissa backed away before he could spot her. That night, she texted her sister. "You ever heard of someone disappearing after finding something they shouldn't at work?" Amara wrote back almost immediately. "What's going on, Riss? You okay? Just a random question." Random questions don't come at midnight with no explanation. "Call me." But Marissa didn't. She couldn't. Instead, she opened her laptop and started Googling. FBI Financial Investigation Carrington Group. Nothing. Payroll employee missing Carrington. Still nothing. She scrolled through pages and pages of results, but it was all surface level. Charity events, stock tips, smiling photos of Mr. Carrington shaking hands with community leaders. The real stuff, whatever that was, hadn't hit the press. That Saturday morning brought more unease. Carrington called a staff check-in, something he had never done before. All 5 full-time employees, 2 housekeepers, a cook, a groundskeeper, and Marissa were summoned to the kitchen. He stood at the head of the long marble island, dressed in dark jeans and a crisp button-up. His eyes swept over them like a general inspecting troops. "We're going to have some visitors over the next few weeks," he said. "Federal agents. Nothing serious, just some questions, about a former employee who caused trouble. I want everyone to be professional, respectful, and say nothing unless directly asked." Marissa clenched her fists under the counter. "That it?" Carrington asked, voice even. Everyone nodded. "Great. That'll be all." As the staff dispersed, he caught Marissa's eye. He smiled, but it wasn't kind. "Stay back for a minute, Marissa." Her stomach dropped. The others left the room. The silence that followed was thick as syrup. Carrington crossed his arms. "You've been working here for what, 3 years?" "Yes, sir. Never had a problem with you. You're reliable. Quiet. That's what I like about you." She said nothing. He stepped closer. "Just make sure it stays that way. There's a lot of noise out there. Gossip. Stories. People making things up for attention." "I don't gossip, sir," she replied, voice steady. His eyes didn't blink. "But keep it that way." He left the kitchen, his shoes clicking against the tile. Marissa stood froze and in place. She couldn't stay here much longer. That afternoon, she went down to the old storage room in the basement, a place nobody visited unless something was broken or leaking. She'd cleaned it once a year ago and found dust 2 inches thick. Now, she pulled out her phone and turned on the camera. She began recording. "This is Marissa Johnson. Today is August 3rd. I work at the Carrington estate, and I've heard conversations. Things I can't ignore. If something happens to me, I want people to know it wasn't an accident." She stopped the recording, saved it, and uploaded it to a cloud drive she'd never used before. She wrote the password on a slip of paper and tucked it into her shoe. Then she did what she'd never dared to do before. She dialed the FBI tip line. The phone rang twice. Then a calm, robotic voice answered. "You have reached the FBI tip line. If this is an emergency, please hang up and dial 911. If you would like to leave an anonymous tip, press 1 now." Marissa hesitated, her thumb hovering over the button. She was sitting in the employee break room, a small windowless space with a flickering ceiling light and mismatched chairs. "No cameras down here." She checked twice. She pressed 1. A new voice came on. This time, human. "Federal Bureau of Investigation. What information are you calling to report?" Her throat tightened. "My name is Marissa Johnson. I work at 1245 Ridgeview Lane. That's Mr. Carrington's estate. I overheard something about financial fraud and possibly someone being silenced. I don't know all the details, but I'm scared. I think I'm in danger." There was silence on the other end, not the kind that meant no one was listening, but the kind that meant someone was. The agent finally spoke. "Thank you for calling, Ms. Johnson. Can you meet someone in person?" Her heart stopped. "Will I be safe?" "We'll do everything we can. How soon can you get out?" "I can't just leave," she whispered. "He watches everything." There was a pause. "Do you have another phone? A safe way to be contacted?" "No." "Okay," the agent said. "Then listen carefully. Don't tell anyone you made this call. Not your friends. Not your family. Not your co-workers. We'll reach out soon, discreetly." And just like that, the call ended. Marissa stared at the phone, her hands trembling. That night, she didn't sleep. She lay awake listening to every creak, every engine sound on the road, every branch scratching the window pane. Her S.U.I.T. case was half packed under her bed, just in case. She thought about her mother, about the bills she still had to send money for, about her sister, Amara, who had no idea how deep this mess really was. Marissa wanted to call her, just to hear her voice. But it was too dangerous. What if they were listening? Sunday afternoon brought a storm. Rain poured down in sheets, slapping against the tall windows. The sky turned charcoal gray, and the air grew heavy with tension. Marissa used the excuse of the weather to stay inside. She vacuumed the living room, polished the staircase railing, anything to stay busy and out of Carrington's line of sight. But around 4 p.m., Elise Carrington, the boss's ice-cold wife, appeared in the hallway like a ghost. "Marissa," she said, with a strange lilt in her voice, "my husband would like to see you in his office." The words sent a chill down Marissa's spine. "Did he say what for, ma'am?" "No, but don't keep him waiting." Elise walked away, and heels that clicked like gunshots on the floor. Marissa wiped her hands on her apron. Her palms were wet with sweat. The door to the office was half open again, same as that day. She knocked gently. "Come in." Carrington was behind his desk, wearing a navy sweater and looking disturbingly calm. He gestured for her to sit in the chair across from him. "I won't keep you long," he said smoothly. "I just wanted to ask, are you happy working here, Marissa?" She blinked. "Yes, sir. You've always been dependable," he said, folding his hands. "And I respect that. Which is why I want to give you something." He opened a drawer and pulled out a slim envelope. "What? No name on it." She didn't take it. "What is it?" she asked. "Just a token of appreciation. You worked hard. I like to reward loyalty." Her stomach turned. "Thank you, sir, but I can't accept that." His eyes narrowed. "I insist." She met his gaze, and for a moment, neither of them blinked. Then she said, I should get back to cleaning." She stood and left the envelope untouched on the table. She didn't know what scared her more, the fact that he offered her hush money or the fact that he was still smiling when she walked out. On Monday, something changed. The new maid, Lydia, stopped showing up. No explanation, just gone. "Called out sick," was all the cook said, shaking her head. "That girl's been coughing all week. Maybe it got worse." But Marissa had seen Lydia just 2 days ago, perfectly fine, laughing in the laundry room. Another disappearance. She could feel her world shrinking. That afternoon, Marissa was outside collecting towels by the pool when she noticed a man parked across the street. A gray Toyota sedan, not luxury, not flashy, but parked at an odd angle, like someone was watching. She turned her back quickly and kept folding. She saw the car again later that evening, then the next morning, always nearby, never moving, always empty when she looked again. Or maybe not empty. Was it the FBI? By Tuesday, paranoia had fully set in. She checked over her shoulder constantly. She stopped speaking to other staff. She didn't even go into the break room anymore. Then, right before lunch, the manila envelope showed up in her room. No note, no message, just the envelope. She stared at it for a full minute before opening it. Inside was a printed photo. From the back, on the phone, in the break room. She dropped the photo, heart pounding. There was one sentence written on the bottom in red ink. "Be careful who you call." Marissa stood frozen, staring at the photograph on the floor. Her face wasn't visible, just her figure hunched over the break room table, phone pressed to her ear. But she knew the moment, the angle, the time of day. That was the call. She bent down slowly, picked it up with shaking fingers and flipped it over. Nothing on the back. The red ink on the front bled slightly into the paper, like T had been written quickly. The words screamed without screaming. Be careful who you call. She glanced at the door, still locked. She checked the corners of the ceiling. No visible cameras, but clearly, that meant nothing now. If they had photos like this, they had eyes on her somewhere. And that meant only one thing. They knew. She didn't finish her shift that day. Faked a migraine. Said she was dizzy from cleaning fumes. Elise Carrington rolled her eyes, but waved her off without protest. Drink some water and lie down, she said, already texting on her phone. Marissa left the house and didn't go to her room. She walked 3 blocks, then 6, then 10. Not in any real direction, just away. Past the country club gates, past the tennis courts and the manicured hedges. She didn't stop until she hit a small diner on the edge of town, a place no one rich would be caught dead in. There, in a booth sticky with syrup, she ordered black coffee and stared out the window for an hour. She couldn't go back, but she couldn't leave either. Not yet. She had to find proof. That night, she returned to the house late. The driveway was quiet, the lights inside dim. She used her back key, the staff entrance, and slipped in like a ghost. No footsteps, no voices. She checked her room. Everything was untouched, but the envelope was gone. No photo, no ink, like it had never existed. She stood there in the dark, breathing shallowly. They were playing with her. The next morning, she received a text from an unknown number. Tuesday, 6:30 p.m. The park, south bench by the lake. Come alone. No name, no details. She deleted it immediately, but she memorized it. And all day, she kept asking herself the same question. Was this a trap? Or was this the FBI? At 6:10 p.m., Marissa stepped off the bus 2 blocks from the city park. She wore jeans, a hoodie, and sunglasses. No makeup, no jewelry. She'd left her work ID at home. Her phone was turned off and raw. Peephead in foil, a trick her sister once told her about blocking GPS signals. She didn't even know if it worked, but it made her feel better. The park was mostly empty, except for a few joggers and a man walking a golden retriever. She spotted the south bench easily, the one by the water where the ducks gathered, and sat down, heart pounding. At 6:34, someone sat beside her. Not a man, a woman. Black, mid-30s, in a denim jacket and cargo pants. Pretty, sharp eyes. She didn't look like an agent, but she also didn't look like someone who accidentally picked the wrong bench. I only have 5 minutes, the woman said quietly, not looking at her. I need to know what you saw. Marissa kept her voice low. I overheard them. In his office. Talking about moving money around. Hiding something before an audit. And a girl who used to work payroll. They said she's gone. Handled. That word. I don't know what it means, but it didn't sound right. The woman nodded slowly. Do you have any proof? Only what I heard. And a recording I made of myself, just in case something happens. No documents? Well, footage, nothing. Just me. The woman finally turned to look at her. Then listen carefully. You need to get something. Paper trail. Details. Screenshots. Anything. If you want this to mean something, if you want to protect yourself, you need evidence. I can't just sneak into his office, Marissa whispered. There are cameras. Security. People watching me. Then, you'll have to be smarter than them, the woman said. Because I guarantee you, they're already making plans. You don't have much time. She stood, brushing imaginary lint from her jacket. One more thing, she added without turning back. If anyone asks where you were tonight, say you were at church. And then she was gone. Marissa didn't go home right away. She sat on that bench for a long time, watching the lake. She realized 2 terrifying things. No one was going to save her. If he wanted to get out alive, she had to fight back. She returned to the Carrington estate just after dark. Nobody questioned her. But when she passed his office, she stopped. The door was open again. Empty. Lights off. Her hands were sweating. Her throat dry. She took a step inside. Then another. It smelled like expensive cologne and leather. She turned on the small lamp by the bookcase, just enough light to see. She moved fast. To the desk. Bottom drawer. Locked. TV. Pulled a paperclip from her apron pocket, a trick she'd watched on YouTube months ago. Her hands were shaking too badly. It wouldn't fit. She tried again. Click. It opened. Inside, nothing unusual. Ends. A calculator. A silver money clip. And a flash drive. She stared at it. Closed the drawer. Turned off the light. And walked out. That night, Marissa didn't sleep. She lay in bed, holding the flash drive in her hand, her breath steady, her eyes wide open. She had something and that meant they would come looking. The next morning, Marissa tucked the flash drive deep into the lining of her work bag. She'd cut a small slit in the seam, just big enough to hide it, and reinforced the fabric with safety pins. It wasn't a perfect plan, but it was the best she could manage without raising suspicion. She didn't dare open it on her own laptop. Not at home. Not on the estate's Wi-Fi. Every step had to be calculated now. Downstairs, the Carrington household was unusual, quiet. No yelling, no barking dog, no sounds of Elise berating the cook for putting parsley on the eggs instead of chives. Just silence. Marissa moved through the morning routine like clockwork, wiping the counters, replacing hand towels, polishing the silverware, but her mind was racing. Had anyone noticed the flash drive was missing? Had Hugh already looked for it? By noon, she still hadn't seen Mr. Carrington, and that worried her more than if he had been stomping around yelling. At 1:17 p.m., she received another text from an unknown number. Was it there? No name, no emojis, no instructions. She typed back with trembling fingers, yes, a flash drive. I haven't opened it yet. A pause. Then, don't. Bring it tonight. Same park. Different bench. East side near the gazebo. 7 p.m. She stared at the screen. Another meeting. Another risk. But she had no choice. Not anymore. At 3:42 p.m. the front door slammed. Carrington was home. Marissa was in the hallway upstairs, dusting picture frames when she heard him storm through the house. She crept closer to the landing and peeked down. He was furious. Pacing. Phone to his ear. No, it's gone. He shouted. I don't know how or when, but it's not where I left it. Pause. I don't care if you have to tear the whole damn place apart to find it. If that drive gets into the wrong hands. He stopped suddenly. His head turned. He looked up, directly at the landing. Marissa ducked back, heart in her throat. That evening, she left early again. Told Elise she had a family emergency. Elise didn't even look up from her wine glass. Fine. Just make sure the toilets in the guest wing are done tomorrow morning. Marissa walked out the back gate, just as the sun dipped below the trees. The park was nearly empty. A cool breeze swept across the grass, and the sound of crickets filled the air. She approached the gazebo slowly, her eyes scanning every corner. The same woman from before was already sitting. There, dressed differently this time. In workout clothes, hair pulled up, looking like any other jogger taking a rest. Marissa sat beside her, keeping a foot of space between them. She handed over the flash drive. The woman slipped it into a side pocket without looking. I'll get this to the right team, she said quietly. If there's anything on it, it could help build the case. Marissa swallowed. And if there's nothing, then you go back to work like nothing happened. Until we find something else. But what if they find out? What if they know it was me? They already suspect you, the woman said, not unkindly. But suspicion and proof are two very different things. Marissa looked away. I'm scared. I know. The woman stood, then paused. Do not tell anyone about this. Don't send messages. Don't search anything on your phone. We'll be in touch. And just like last time, she vanished into the dust. That night, Marissa returned home to find her bedroom door open. She never left it open. Her sheets were rumpled. The drawer with her underwear was slightly ajar. Nothing looked stolen, but everything had been touched. She didn't scream, didn't panic, just stood in the doorway, staring. They had searched her room. She went to the bathroom and threw up. The next day brought a terrifying shift. Marissa arrived downstairs for her morning duties only to find that the other housekeeper, Lorraine, a quiet older woman who'd worked there even longer than he, was gone. Let go, the cook whispered. No warning, no reason. Elise claimed it was downsizing, but Marissa knew better. They were clearing the house. At noon, Carrington approached her. No smiles, no pleasantries, just a clipboard in his hand and a blank stare. I need you to sign this, he said. Confirmation you've completed your employee code of conduct refresher. Marissa hesitated. I haven't taken any refresher. He raised an eyebrow. Well, maybe you just forgot. He tapped the line for her signature. Her hand hovered over the pen. Sir, I don't feel comfortable signing something that isn't accurate. He smiled, slow and dangerous. Is that so? Yes, sir. He said nothing for a moment, then turned the clipboard toward himself, crossed her name off the list with a flourish, and walked away. She knew what that meant. You're next. That night, she didn't sleep at the house. She texted a friend from her church, Miss Rochelle, a retired nurse who lived in a small apartment near the bus station, and asked if she could stay over. No questions, she wrote. Just a place for one night. Miss Rochelle didn't hesitate. Of course, baby. My door is open. As she lay on a borrowed air mattress on Rochelle's floor, Marissa clutched her backpack to her chest. Inside was the only thing she had left, a second recording. One she'd made after hiding the flash drive. One where she described everything in full detail. Times, dates, names, and threats. She had stored it in 3 places, her Google Drive, an encrypted USB, and a printed transcript in an envelope hidden in a Bible at the church library. She didn't know what was going to happen tomorrow. but she knew one thing: they were coming for her, and she had to be ready. The next morning, the house felt colder than usual. Marissa moved quietly through the rooms, trying to keep her nerves in check. The silence wasn't comforting, it was ominous. She heard footsteps behind her as He carried a tray of coffee to the study. She turned slowly. Mr. Carrington stood in the doorway, his eyes dark and unreadable. "Sleep well?" he asked, voice low. "Yes, sir," Marissa replied carefully, not meeting his gaze. He took a step forward. "Good. Because sometimes people hear things they shouldn't, and sometimes they think they understand things that aren't meant for them." Marissa's heart thudded. She held the tray steady. "You've worked here a long time," he continued. That's what I expect." He paused, then fixed her with a cold stare. "Let's keep it that way." Without another word, he turned and left. Marissa exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of his warning. Later that day, she found a moment alone in the laundry room. She pulled out the small notebook she'd hidden in her apron pocket, the one where she'd written down snatches of the conversation she overheard days ago. There were names, numbers, hints about offshore accounts, and something about a cleanup crew. She folded the paper carefully and hid it deep inside a bag of linens. She needed help, but from whom? The police weren't an option. Not in this town. The thought of her family's safety weighed heavy on her. If Carrington suspected she'd talk, she knew what could happen. That evening, as Marissa was mopping the hallway near the office, she froze. Voices came through the half-closed door, hushed but urgent. A man's voice, unfamiliar and rough. "Are you sure she didn't hear anything?" Carrington's voice replied, calm but dangerous. "She says no. What, I don't trust it." There was a long silence. Then the man said coldly, "What do you want to do?" Carrington's reply was chilling. "If she talks, she's gone." Marissa's breath caught. Her hands clenched the mop handle tightly. She backed away silently, heart pounding in her chest. That night, alone in her small room, Marissa's hands trembled as she pulled out her phone. She called someone she trusted, an old friend named Malik who had worked in journalism but left after threats forced him underground. He answered after several rings. "Marissa?" "Yes, Malik. I'm scared." "Where are you?" "Carrington's house." "I think I know I'm involved." "Get out," he said firmly. Now, Marissa knew she couldn't just leave. Not yet. She was trapped. But she had to be careful. The stakes were higher than ever. The night's air was thick and still as Marissa lay awake on the thin mattress in her small room. Every creak of the old house made her flinch. She couldn't shake the words that echoed in her mind. "If she talks, she's gone." The threat wasn't vague. It was a promise. She looked over at the small bag by her bedside. Inside was the flash drive she'd risked everything to steal. It held the secrets that could bring down Mr. Carrington or seal her fate. Her phone vibrated softly on the nightstand. A message from Malik. "You need to disappear tonight." Marissa bit her lip. Disappear. The word felt heavy. If she left, she might never see her sister Amara again. Her mother. The life she knew. But if she stayed, well, that was a risk she couldn't afford. She made a decision. At midnight, she packed a small bag. Just the essentials, a change of clothes, the flash drive hidden deep inside, her phone battery charged, GPS off, and a worn photo of her family. She slipped quietly out the door and into the shadows. The streets were deserted. The moon cast pale light over the empty sidewalks. Marissa's heart pounded with every step. She kept to the alleys and back roads, avoiding the main streets where cameras might spot her. Her breaths came shallow and fast. Every sound made her jump. Halfway to the bus station, she heard footsteps behind her. She stopped, held her breath. A figure emerged, a man in a dark jacket, his face obscured by a hoodie. "Marissa," he said softly. She recognized the voice instantly. "Agent Donovan," she whispered, relief flooding. He held out a hand. "Come with me. It's not safe here anymore." Inside the car, the silence was thick. Agent Donovan finally spoke. "We've been monitoring Carrington for months. Financial crimes, corruption, even worse. But this," he looked at her, "your courage is what might bring him down." Marissa swallowed hard. "What happens now?" "We get you somewhere safe. Then we dig into the evidence you've given us." She nodded, exhausted but determined. "There's no going back." Back at Carrington Estate, the front door sat ominously quiet. Inside, the rooms felt empty, except for one darkened office where secrets festered. Marissa sat in the backseat of the unmarked car, her fingers nervously tapping on her lap. The city lights blurred as they sped down the highway, the hum of the engine the only sound between her and Agent Donovan. "We're taking you to a safe house," Donovan said without turning. "You'll be protected there. Cameras, security, everything. No one will fin you." She nodded, swallowing her fear. "And my family, my sister, my mom," he sighed. "We'll keep them safe too." Discreetly. "For now, your safety comes first." Hours later, they arrived at a modest house nestled in a quiet suburb. The yard was surrounded by tall hedges and a wrought iron fence. Donovan opened the door and stepped inside. Marissa was led to a small but comfortable room. A laptop, a phone with a locked line, and a small safe sat on the desk. "This will be your base de novo," N said. "We'll be in touch with updates and instructions. For now, keep your head down." Marissa sank onto the bed, exhaustion crashing over her. The weight of everything she had left behind hit her hard. The following days were a blur of interviews, document checks, and secure phone calls. Marissa shared what she knew, slowly piecing together a story of financial fraud, threats, and disappearance. Agent Donovan told her the FBI had been investigating Carrington for years, but nothing concrete had ever stuck until now. Marissa's evidence, combined with undercover surveillance, was enough to start a serious case. One evening, as Marissa sat alone in the safe house, the phone rang. "Marissa, it's Malik," the voice said softly. "I've been following the news. They're finally arresting Carrington tomorrow morning." Tears welled in her eyes. Relief, fear, hope, all tangled together. "Thank you," he whispered. "You did the right thing," Malik replied. "Now, we wait." Back at the estate, police cars and media vans gathered outside. The walls that once hid secrets were about to crumble. The morning air was thick with tension as the sun rose over the city. News vans lined the streets outside Carrington's estate, cameras flashing relentlessly as police officers prepared for the arrest. Inside the safe house, Marissa watched the live broadcast on a small television, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. The man she had once cleaned up after, served without question, was finally being held accountable. But relief was tempered by a gnawing fear. She couldn't shake the feeling that someone close to her, someone she trusted, had betrayed her. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You're next if you don't stay silent." Marissa's breath caught. She looked around the safe house, suddenly feeling the walls closing in. Who was watching her now? Later that day, Agent Donovan arrived with serious news. "We've uncovered a mole in the investigation team," he said grimly. "Someone feeding information back to Carrington's partners." Marissa's heart pounded. "Could it be someone from your side?" He nodded slowly. "We're tightening security, but you need to be extra cautious. Don't trust anyone unless you're certain." That night, Marissa stayed awake, watching shadows flicker against the window. Her life had become a game of trust and fear. One wrong move could mean the end. The courtroom was packed. Cameras flashed. The air was thick with anticipation. Marissa sat quietly in a corner, flanked by agents and lawyers. She was no longer just a housekeeper. She was a witness, a symbol of courage. The prosecution laid out the evidence, the offshore accounts, the bribes, the threats, and the silenced employees. Marissa's testimony was clear, heartfelt, and undeniable. Carrington sat stone-faced, but as the trial wore on, cracks began to show. His allies turned on him. His empire crumbled. Outside the courthouse, a crowd had gathered. Reporters, supporters, and ordinary people who had followed the story. Marissa felt the weight of every eye on her. She thought of her family, her sister, her mother, and the life she hoped to rebuild. But freedom came at a price. She had lost her job, her home, her sense of safety. She was no longer the quiet woman who cleaned floors. She was a survivor. Weeks later, Marissa stood at a community center, sharing her story with other women who had faced injustice. Her voice was steady, her eyes fierce. "I was scared," she said, "but sometimes you have to speak up, even when the world tells you to stay quiet."